Hi, my name's Michael. I'm going to show you some great tips, tricks, and techniques on how to do a textured A-line lob type of technique on a haircut here. We're here at the Modern Edge Salon. I am the owner. I'm also a matrix educator that works all across the country. So I'm going to give you some great tips today on this video. We're going to start with our mannequin, and we have it pre-sectioned into 7 sections. So we have the front fringe, we have the crown, your temples, your occipital, and your nape. And we have it pinned off into these craft regions so we have comfort and control through our haircut. To start our haircut, we're going to go to the center back and subdivide everything off cleanly and do a 2-inch subsection. Straight down, and we're going to go about to the center of the back or the shoulders where we're going to start. And we're going to come in and we're going to point cut as we do this technique. So when we point cut, we're going to first be Vulcan, live long and prosper. You're going to hold the hair between your pointer and your middle finger, and you're going to use your ring finger as a guide. And as you cut, you're going to go in and close on the way out, and then we can go back through and cross cut as we go. Center section, mid shoulder, and we're going to point cut left, and then cross cut back to the right. And this is going to create a textured line with movement, but still build weight. And we're going to create even little fence posts rather than triangles that push to one side or the other. If we do that, it could tend to give us a kick or flip. We just want to get some light movement in the inactive part of the hair where it tends to fall heavy. Next, we'll move to our left side. And we're going to take that first section as a guide. We're going to gently bring everything back over the shoulder, but not really drug left or right. Just gently over-direct it over the shoulder. You can use your comb to give you a guide of a straight line. And again, we'll just point cut there. Because we have that light over-direction over the shoulder, that's going to start giving us our A-line shape or our drop. And then just kind of cross-check with your comb to make sure you have your balance. And you could always use your comb for comb control as well to help give you that balanced shape. Now, if I was cutting on a regular client, I would stand right in front of my section here. For the video's sake, I'm just going to step in and still kind of be back here a little bit. Use your comb as your guide, resting on your finger, point cutting and cross cutting. Check your balance, a little bit of weight right here. Great, so now we've got a little bit of a textured line starting. We'll drop down our 2 occipital regions now. Again, we're going to duplicate that same technique. So for control, we'll start in the center back, push the hair over the shoulder out of your way, clean combing, everything comes down. Now, generally we want to keep everything at 0, but if we're going to put texture and movement into the hair, we're going to want to gently lift. So we're going to go about 1 to 2 fingers width away from the back. So if you would put your fingers on their back, we're going to be about that far away. Instead of holding it with their comb tight against their neck or their back, we're going to maybe do about 10 degrees of elevation. That's going to put a micro layer in the hair, which will also help give us a little bit of that movement. So straight down, slight elevation. We'll be able to see our guide from underneath. Cut and cross cut. And then we're going to move to our left to repeat the same section. Everything down. We can clearly see our guide from underneath. And cross cut back. Check your balance. Looking good. You can add a little more texture if you need it. And then we'll move on to our right side as well. Clean combing. And cross cut back and forth. Check your balance, that looks good. Cool. So we've already done the whole back in a really quick period of time. We're going to now move to our sides. And we'll just drop down our temporal regions. Again, this is the inactive area where the hair tends just to come down and fall. And that's why we're starting to do our point cutting to create that movement or take off a little bit of that weight while still having a strong perimeter shape. So we're going to come straight down, follow our guide from behind, and go straight off. If you want it to be a little bit more exaggerated, you could create a little bit of an A-line shape by dragging your fingers on a forward drop if you want to add a little bit more exaggeration to your line. But naturally, from following it over-directed back over the shoulder, we're automatically going to get a little bit of a natural fall for that A-line type of shape. So that would be our left side. We'll rotate around to our right. Drop our next temporal region. And we're going to follow that same technique. So if you have smaller fingers, feel free to subdivide these sections so they're more controllable. Usually we work in a 1 to 2 inch subsection. We have our guide from before, point cut, and then cross cut as well. Take a step forward, right in front of your work, and repeat. Check your balance. Great. And then once you do that point, just rotate around and check your length on both sides. Fantastic. That looks great. All right, so now we're going to drop the chair down for our mannequin, and we're going to start to move in the active part of the area. Active is where we get our volume, it's where we get our layers, it's where we get our movement and our swing when we naturally move. So we're going to drop down the crown, release that through. And we did prep the hair with a little bit of Insecure from Matrix, just to put a little bit of slip as a cutting lotion as we're working through. So I'm going to switch my shear. I'm going to turn to this angle now so you guys can see what I'm going to do. And I'm going to come straight out, straight off of the head for my layer. So center back. I'm going to do about a 1 inch section. So let me turn this here. So that's about the width of the section that we're going to do, and then we're going to come straight out, straight off. And we're going to do a back cutting technique. So I'm going to let the bottom perimeter fall away. When that falls out, that's my guide. The motion I'm going to do is I'm going to open and close my scissor, and I'm also going to do a pushing motion as if I was teasing or waving goodbye to the hair. And I'm going to very gently open and close, and that's going to give me this back cut layer, and it's going to give me a very long, very soft layer that falls through. And I'll release that, and here you can see there's kind of like micro layers or uneven layers put in through the perimeter, but we still have a lot of weight, but there's some texture and movement going through the hair. So that's how we're going to start, and we're going to work on a square shape. So we're going to kind of think of a box where you're going to pull everything straight out into you or out into your chest. So I'm going to take a step to the right. Everything will come back to that center guide. I have a rough idea of where I started because it's an uneven layer, but I still have my balance to the haircut. I'm going to go to the next section, and now everything will come straight back and straight off. So instead of dragging it to the center or walking around, I'm going to be here like a box. Everything is going to come square like a box. Straight back, straight off. It is important that you point up. If you point down, the hair tends to fall out or you don't have as much tension. By pointing up, you have more strength to hold with your fingers, and the hair won't slip out because it's in your palm. So straight out, straight off, and then I'm going to back cut again. If you feel you need, you can cross check. There's a lot of balance there. If there's anything irregular, you could just lightly point cut, but we don't want to make anything too perfect in this. So now I'm going to take a step to my left. I'm going to use my center guide. Everything will come straight out, straight off to my center section, number 1 that we started with. So straight out, straight off. I'll let my guide fall out. I can see my previous cut hair, and I'm going to do that same technique of opening and closing and gently pushing. I'm not snipping. I'm gently opening and closing and not completely closing the shear as I'm cutting. So that was section 2. We're now going to go to 3, which is just before the corner. I have a good guide. I will walk through the scissors. And now 4 is going to be behind the ear, and we'll come like that box back to number 3 so I have that nice square shape. And back cut. And then we'll cross-check straight out and straight off into our belly. And there we go, we have that beautiful box shape. If anything's a little irregular, you could just dust into that like we talked about earlier. When I release this, we still have that nice strong perimeter line, but there's just a little bit of loose movement going through the hair. Now we're going to move on to our side sections. And when we get to the side, this tends to be a little bit of a scary area or like a danger zone. The reason for that is that we have more hair in the nape region than we do in the temporal region. There's about 2 or 3 inches of difference there. So if we don't want to get the beauty school hole of death where we get that big triangle over the ear, we're going to create a new guide. So how we're going to do that is come straight over the ear, come straight out, straight off. We're going to let our perimeter length fall away, and that way we know we're safe. And now we're going to duplicate that same technique. If you have finer hair, just be a little bit more gentle with your cutting technique, and that'll make sure you keep your density over the ear, so that way we don't get a jump or a hole. We maintained our perimeter length there. We'll take our next subsection, which will be number 2, and that will come straight out, straight off. Again, I'm pointing up with my scissor and with my fingers. And then when we get to the front piece by the face, we're going to take that back one section. So we're going to create a little bit of a triangle type of shape. We're going to pull this back to that one previous, and that's going to keep that length or that weight coming towards the face to get that A-line longer by the shoulder feeling. So we'll come out, straight off. And then we can cross-check into our belly, and we should have a triangle that's getting longer to the front because we have a slight over direction. Alternate to our next side. We're going to repeat the same thing. So just over the ear. Let's move her over just a bit. I'm bending my knees so I have a good body position. Everything's combed out smooth. I let my guide fall away to start. Gently cutting, not closing the shear all the way. And I'm back cutting into the hair. That will then establish my guide as number 1. Number 2 will come straight out, straight off to number 1. Let that fall out. There's my guide. Gently cutting. Check my balance. That's great. And now number 3 will come back to the previous section to give me that triangle kind of feel. So that'll be slightly over-directed back and back cut. So now we'll check that. That looks great. So now we're on to our front fringe region. So we're going to drop the front fringe and we're going to move into our top section. I'm going to switch to a smaller shear so it's more comfortable. And when I'm going to do this, I'm going to come straight up, straight off. So let's drop her down a little bit more. And I'm going to go in and kind of use a notching kind of motion. So I'm going to hold the hair here. I'm going to go in open, gently close, and kind of flick away. So that way I'm going to do some deep notching or deep point cutting into the hair. So I'm going to start in the crown, and that's going to be a stationary guide in the crown. And I will have shorter lengths from where I back cut previously. So I'm going to go right at the occipital ridge, or where my crown section was. I'm going to come straight up, straight off, about a 1-inch section so I have a good amount in my hand. I can see on my corners where I have those shorter pieces will be my guide. I'll turn this way for you. For comfort's sake, I always pull up with tension and keep good control. If it's higher than you can reach, once you have good control, then you can comfortably drop it where you need to see and break into that with that notching technique. Or you could come in and cross cut, whatever works better for you. I'm going to go straight across the whole top, everything straight up, straight off, and I'll have a slight over direction back to my previous section. So everything is going to come back on a triangle. So I'll stand this way so you can see that over direction happening. So straight off, straight up, smooth combing. I have my guide. So everything's getting over directed back, drop for comfort, and point cut or notch cut to get that texture in the hair. The front fringe is going to come right back to the crown. And then I'm going to repeat that section again. So we just broke into that section there. So that was our perimeter, our layer, our top layer. So now we tend to have a little bit of a point on the corner there. So what I'm going to do is a soft shear technique. So I'm going to have a solid blade, and then I'm going to put a thinning shear or a texture shear on, and I'm going to cut with both at the same time, just to knock off the corner. So we're going to kind of make like a stop sign shape with this. So we're going to come up off of the head. The easiest way to find it is put your fingers on the head, and when the round is there, you'll come straight up, straight off. There's a little bit of a point, and we're just going to knock off that corner or that point in the same regions we were. So the back is going to come back, and the sides will go to the sides, just to soften that edge. And I'm not doing a really hard, blunt crunch snip. I'm being more free and airy and just kind of lightly knocking off the corner rather than cutting it a blunt shape. Again, we over-directed the front, so we'll over-direct that back again. There's that little point. We'll soften that. And then if we were in our chair, we would now walk to the other side. So now my back would be to you or to the mirror, and I would do that same angle here. So straight up, there's our corner, soften into that. We're going to do our over direction on this section, so we're going to gently push back or make that triangle away from the face. There's a little bit more, and we're going to soften into that corner. So now we've lightened that up and put a little bit of movement through that hair. And now we're left to our front fringe. If they want that strong lob feeling, you can just be done and leave that length coming through the front. I'm going to go in and soften that up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is take that front fringe triangle. A great way to establish that is from the high point of the head on top, and let the hair fall where it naturally parts. Once you see where that natural split is, you can follow that down. So we get that nice triangle through there. I'm going to again find where that corner is by putting my fingers there. I went straight up, straight off. Find that corner. And now I'm going to rather slowly walk through with my scissors, or I'm going to use my soft shearing technique where I use both to soften off that edge. And that's just going to give us a little bit of like a side bang or a shorter piece to play with in the front there to open that up a little bit. And depending on how short you want that front fringe is how deep you would start this section and then just walk or talk to the edges. And that's just going to open that up in the front and give you some softer pieces without creating a traditional short face frame. It's just a little bit of pieces or a side bang to play with there in the front. And that's how you can do a really quick textured lob using our matrix techniques from our craft academies. Have a great day. Join us again for our next video.